Discover the incredible transformation of a poor maid exposed to the billionaire's son, a life-changing encounter. Clara's heart raced as the grand chandelier sparkled above her like a constellation of dreams. Each day unfolded in the pristine home of the Kensington family, and she was the one who kept it glistening. At just 25, she was the embodiment of determination, balancing the weight of her job with her hopes for a better life, all thanks to lessons from her loving mom, lessons in hard work and sacrifice. She wiped the polished silverware, imagining a different future as the sunlight danced off the delicate designs. Little did she know, destiny had a surprise waiting for her. As she turned, she caught Jeremy's gaze, tall and earnest, son of the Kensingtons. He stood there, shirt slightly untucked, a whirlwind of thoughts behind his charming smile. At 27, he felt the pressure of his family's legacy like chains around his heart. The moment was electric. Clara saw a flicker of something genuine in his eyes, and suddenly, the air felt charged with possibilities. Their worlds collided quietly during moments shared in the corner of the kitchen or while tidying up the lavish living room. Jeremy's laughter rang like music to her ears as he spoke of his dreams of traveling, away from the gold-locked cage of affluence. Clara, in turn, poured her aspirations into the conversation, making something of herself, not just for her mother but for her community. They found solace in each other's stories, revealing fears that had long been hidden beneath surface smiles. But life is rarely a straight path, and Clara soon faced her most daunting challenge yet. A phone call from her mother had the weight of the world behind it, a health scare that twisted Clara's stomach into knots. Here she was caught in a storm between duty to her job and the deeper obligation to the one person who had sacrificed everything for her. She felt a rush of vulnerability, her heart pounding as her definition of success blurred. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Clara couldn't shake the pressure building around her, but Jeremy had become her unexpected anchor. They leaned into their confessions, a web of connection forming amidst their struggles. Yet, the glances from his wealthy friends told stories of disdain. Each judgment felt like a cut through the fragile bond they were trying to build. Then came the charity gala, a night of glitzy attire and extravagant decor, where Clara would stand not as a maid but as a voice for the overlooked. Taking a deep breath, she stood up for her community, her heart racing as she demanded the recognition they deserved. The tension in the room thickened, jaws dropped, and for a moment, it felt as if she had shifted the very ground beneath them. But love, like the most delicate of fabrics, began to unravel. Could their worlds truly intertwine, or would duty's heavy hand pull them apart? Clara rushed home to her mother's side, inspired but fearful of the consequences awaiting her. Then she overheard whispers, bittersweet threads that hinted her courage might endanger her love story with Jeremy. Would they be torn between ambition and affection? As uncertainty wrapped around her heart, Clara stood on the edge of a decision that could change everything, and the weight of what lay ahead loomed larger than ever. Clara sat in the small, dimly lit room, her hands clasped tightly together. Her mother lay in the hospital bed, fragile and pale, each shallow breath echoing Clara's fears. The room, filled with stark clinical white and the faint hum of machines, felt more like a prison than a sanctuary. Memories flooded her mind, the laughter they shared, the dreams they built together. Now, all she could feel was the heavy weight of uncertainty. "Mom," Clara whispered, her voice breaking. "You've always been my strength. I wish I could take this away, wish I could make you proud." She brushed a stray hair away from her mother's forehead, fighting back tears. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow across the room, a knock on the door jolted her from her thoughts. It was Jeremy. He stood there, hesitant yet determined, his face a mix of concern and uncertainty. The sight of him brought a flicker of warmth to her chest. "Hey," he said softly, concern etched across his features. "I thought I'd find you here." Clara managed a weak smile. "I didn't expect to see you," she admitted, grateful for his presence. "I'm here for you, Clara. Whatever you need," he said, stepping closer. There was a quiet strength in his voice, and Clara felt a wave of relief wash over her. In that moment, she realized that amid the chaos of her life, Jeremy was becoming a part of her world, something she had never anticipated but desperately needed, but uncertainty loomed larger than ever. She could see the conflict in his eyes as he glanced toward her mother. The difference in their worlds felt palpable. What would his friends think? What would his family say? The judgment they had faced before bubbled to the surface like unease. "I know this is hard for you," he continued. "But you should speak at the event tomorrow. You have a voice, Clara. Let it be heard." I don't know, Jeremy. What if I fail?" Her voice trembled. The pressure to be the voice of the unheard clashed with her fears and her overwhelming love for her mother. "You won't fail. You're stronger than you realize," he replied, gently cupping her hand with his. "And I'll be right there, supporting you." Clara felt a rush of emotion, a mix of gratitude, fear, and overwhelming affection. What if they don't listen? What if I embarrass myself? She shook her head, overwhelmed by doubt. But what if they do? Jeremy leaned closer, his eyes locking onto hers. What if your words change someone else's life? She looked away, contemplating the weight of his words. Could she really bridge the gap between their worlds and bring attention to the struggles they faced? The notion of standing up in front of the elite, in her maid's uniform while her friends mingled in evening gowns and tuxedos, was daunting. But then she remembered her mother's sacrifices, the nights spent working overtime to give Clara a chance at something better. She thought of those in her community, people whose voices were silenced. It sparked something inside her, igniting a flicker of resolve. Jeremy reached for her shoulders, grounding her. "You have a purpose, Clara. Don't let fear get in the way of that." His encouragement was like a breath of fresh air, but doubts fought fiercely in her mind. And as dawn approached, she knew she had to make a choice. Could she face the crowd and share the truth, risking everything, including her relationship with Jeremy? Clara's heart raced with possibilities as the sun threatened to break through the horizon. She stared at the door, feeling the weight of the unknown pressing against her heart. Would she find the strength to take a leap, one that could entwine their lives further or possibly tear them apart? Clara clenched her fists, standing at the brink of change, unaware that the next step she took would shift everything in ways she couldn't even begin to imagine. Clara woke to the soft light streaming through the hospital window, illuminating the room with a gentle warmth. The sounds of the machines beeping continued, a reminder that life was still moving forward, even in this stillness. She rubbed her eyes, trying to shake the heavy fog of sleep and anxiety that clung to her. Today, everything could change. Her mother's breaths were still shallow, each exhalation a struggle. The sight of her so frail twisted something in her heart. Clara reached for her mother's hand, intertwining their fingers, hoping warmth would seep through. Their connection was still alive, still strong. "Mom, I'm going to keep my promise," Clara murmured, her voice steadying. "I will speak today," she decided, letting the resolve sink into her bones. But even as she spoke those words, doubt nagged at her. What if she didn't find the right words? What if no one listened? Clara shifted in the chair, her mind racing back to yesterday's conversation with Jeremy. What if they do? The thought echoed in her head like a mantra. Maybe today she could show them the truth behind the walls of wealth and privilege. She could represent the unheard. After a quick visit from a nurse, Clara decided to get ready for the day. The event would be held in the grand hall at the community center, filled with chandeliers and the soft clinking of glasses. It was a gathering meant to celebrate charity, yet she knew it often overlooked the very people it claimed to help. As she dressed, she chose her uniform carefully, each button seemed to represent a decision. The fabric felt like armor, shielding her from ridicule. She caught a glimpse of her reflection, not wanting to see the fear in her eyes. Instead, she focused on her mother. She could do this for her. The ride to the center felt endless. The streets blurred by, people moving fast, lost in their own lives, oblivious to the turmoil within her. Clara's heart raced with every turn, every block. She clutched a small piece of paper in her pocket, a few phrases scrawled down as reminders of what she wanted to say. They felt inadequate, fluttering wildly with every bump in the road. When she arrived, the atmosphere was electric. Glamorous people mingled, their voices creating a buzz that resonated in her ears. Clara stepped in, her heart pounding louder than the music playing in the background. The decor was beautiful, but it all felt foreign. Clara spotted Jeremy across the room, his presence like an anchor. He caught her eye and smiled, an encouraging nod that sent warmth through her. Yet the nagging doubt returned, rushing in like a tidal wave. She took a deep breath. "Clara." A voice called out as she was about to retreat into the shadows. It was Susan, a friend from high school, dressed in an elegant dress that swayed gracefully around her as she approached. "Wow, Clara, you look great," Susan said, her tone genuine. But Clara could sense the hesitation behind it, as if she wasn't exactly sure how to proceed. "What are you doing here?" Before Clara could answer, a group of glamorous guests swept Susan away, leaving Clara standing alone again. The walls felt like they were closing in. She watched everyone laugh, flirt, and network, her heart racing in a tangled mess of emotions. "Okay," she whispered to herself, taking a step forward. "You can do this." But doubts crept back and the whispers in her mind grew louder. What if they didn't want to hear what she had to say? What if her truth hurt Jeremy? Standing with his friends, as she stood at the mouth of the hall, Clara felt a rush of vulnerability, yet a surge of determination began to build within. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a message from Jeremy. "You got this. I'm proud of you." The words washed over her like a cool breeze. Clara squared her shoulders and took another step. She looked around, catching glimpses of the faces she would soon address. Clara took a deep breath, feeling the air fill her lungs. She had a voice. She had a story. And today, she would finally be heard. But as she moved toward the stage, a man caught her attention. He stood alone, his expression unreadable. Something in his eyes hinted at understanding, but also a deep sadness. Clara hesitated, sensing an unexpected connection. Who was he? And what role would he play in this pivotal moment of her life? Clara took a tentative step forward, her heart thudding in her chest like a wild drum. The man's gaze held her for a moment longer, and she noticed the fine lines etched into his face, as if life had already delivered its fair share of blows. There was something compelling in the way he stood, both strong and vulnerable. Just a moment, she thought. I just need to get past him. But the pull of his presence was magnetic. As she walked closer, she could see that his eyes were a deep shade of blue, mirroring the ocean on a stormy day. She swallowed hard, her throat dry. "Hey," he said gently, breaking the silence. "You okay?" Clara blinked, momentarily at a loss for words. I have to speak up," she finally managed. It felt absurd to admit, but here she was, on the cusp of laying herself bare in front of all these strangers. He nodded, as if he understood an unspoken truth. "They don't always listen," he replied, his voice a quiet rumble. "But what makes you think they shouldn't?" Before Clara could formulate an answer, the sound of live music cut through the air, beckoning attention as the event's host whirled onto the stage, adjusting the microphone. The crowd hushed, anticipation buzzing thickly in the atmosphere. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here tonight," he announced, and the applause that followed felt overwhelming. Clara felt her resolve wafting, inching toward uncertainty. Yet the man beside her gave her an encouraging nod, as if to say, "You can still do this." The host droned on about the charity's mission, lists of names flying by, but Clara's focus was divided, half on his words and half on the people. Their faces blurred together, a sea of exquisite fabrics and polished smiles. Fake, she thought, suddenly sickened by the opulence surrounding her. She felt a fierce desire to disrupt the facade they had so carefully curated. The words previously swirling in her pocket surged to the forefront of her mind, demanding attention. As the host's speech wrapped up, Clara could sense the moment approaching. It was now or never. She caught sight of Jeremy in the audience, his expression one of unwavering support. "Clara," he mouthed, giving her a thumbs up. Her breath caught, her heart swell with confidence. Just as she was about to move, the man beside her stepped in. "You have to remember," he leaned in, his voice low, "they're only as powerful as you allow them to be." Leaning away, his serious expression was a call to action. With a steely gaze set on the stage, Clara took a deep breath, her fear colliding with determination. She moved to the front of the audience, the fabric of her dress trailing behind her like the determination she was harnessing. Words tumbled in her mind, a chaotic orchestra. She scanned the crowd, catching glimpses of judgment and curiosity in equal measure. The chatter faded, and she felt a spotlight of clarity. "Excuse me," she started as she approached the mic. Its cool surface grounded her, like an anchor amid a storm. The audience's eyes shifted, some puzzled, others intrigued. Clara could feel a wave of awareness wash over her, as if she stood on the edge of a vast abyss. "I'm not here to play the role you expect," she declared, her voice echoing off the walls. "I'm not just a face in the background." The audience stirred, murmurs cascading through the crowd. Clara held her ground, letting their anticipation fuel her next words. They needed to hear her truth. She would either make them listen, or she would drown in her own silence. But there was still that stranger's gaze, steady and strong, tethering her to the moment. What if they won't care? What if they turn their backs? But the fear mingled with a resolve that birthed strength, and then, just as the room drew in a collective breath, Clara opened her mouth to reveal not just her words, but her very soul. But as applause began to ripple, a disparaging look from someone across the room struck her. Clara's confidence wavered. Was she truly ready for this, or had she bitten off more than she could chew? Clara hesitated. The applause, meant to encircle her in support, felt more like a set of weights sinking her into hesitation. The look from across the room, cold, dismissive, pulled her thoughts into a frenzy. Would they mock her? Would they judge her for daring to speak her truth? "Breathe," the man's presence beside her wrapped around her like a lifeline. His steady blue gaze bore into hers, whispering encouragement. "Why did I come here?" she thought, battling the storm within. To expose my vulnerability or to educate them about the world they ignore? Her thoughts danced like fireflies, unpredictable and jittery. She could leave. Just turn around and slip back into the anonymity of the crowd. No one would miss her. Would they? But then, she caught sight of Jeremy once more. He sat there, unwavering, a beacon of hope. His eyes shone with belief, silently urging her to continue. And in that moment, a wave of clarity flooded her. "I refuse to let their gaze define my worth," she told herself fiercely. Clara tightened her grip on the microphone, feeling the cool metal press against her palm. "I'm not invisible. I'm here, and I matter." Her voice emerged more solid than before, ringing throughout the hall. "I want to talk about real issues that wrap themselves around our lives and don't always let go. Have you ever stopped to consider what happens to those who struggle daily? Those who don't wear designer clothes or dine at fine restaurants?" The murmurs shifted again, some heavy with contemplation, others edged with discomfort. She could feel the emotions simmering, and they drove her forward. "Many face battles you can't even imagine. It's not glamorous. It's often filled with hunger and despair," she continued, her heart racing. "And we have a choice. We can ignore these truths and keep living in our bubbles, or we can begin to break down those walls." The applause began to dwindle as Clara's words gained momentum. She was no longer worried if they cared, she needed them to understand. "We are all connected by empathy, by our shared humanity. We are not just attendees at a charity event. We are participants in life, carrying responsibility on our shoulders for one another. Suddenly, she was lost in the moment. The thrill of her authenticity propelled her. She wasn't just speaking anymore, she was reaching out, inviting them in. The atmosphere thickened with her urgency. I am here because I am tired. Tired of pretending this is enough. Enough for me, for others. Enough for those whose voices have been silenced by indifference. She declared, her voice rising defiantly. It's time we not just listen but act. It's time we transform goodwill into tangible change. The audience began to react, some nodding, while others exchanged glances that hinted at dawning understanding. Clara's chest tightened. Could it truly be working? Just when she thought she had them, her heart sank as she noticed the dismissive figure in the back again. This time, they crossed their arms, smirking as if watching an amusing performance. Was she truly making a difference? Caught between exhilaration and doubt, Clara hesitated but took a breath, anchoring herself in what she knew to be true. She was not a performer, she was a person with a message that demanded to be heard. Please, don't let my words fade into lifeless echoes. Let us ignite a fire to create real change. Yet, as the murmurs began again, something shifted in the front row. Clara caught a glimpse of someone she hadn't noticed before, a young girl, eyes wide and glimmering with hope, clearly moved. Suddenly, the applause erupted like fireworks, catching her off guard, and amidst it all, the man's deep blue eyes were shining brighter than ever. In that moment, Clara realized her journey was far from over. Now she not only had to face those who questioned her but also carry this newfound purpose and strength. What was she going to do with it? As the cheers washed over her, a pivotal thought broke through. This was just the beginning, and something larger awaited just beyond the horizon. Clara stepped back from the microphone, but she knew a reckoning was approaching. What would it reveal? Clara found herself back in her own world as the applause swelled and washed over her. The noise echoed in her ears, but it wasn't just applause, it was recognition and perhaps, for the first time, a little bit of validation. She stepped away from the microphone, still gripping it like a leaf caught in a storm. The warmth of her words lingered like a fading glow in the room, illuminating paths she hadn't dared to envision before. The buzz of the crowd became a blur around her. She could feel adrenaline coursing through her veins, and that familiar knot of anxiety slowly began to unravel. Clara cast her gaze over the audience, searching for the faces that had appeared frozen, unsure, or resistant. But now she saw a subtle change. Conversations sparked to life, head nods echoed back to her, and the young girl in the front row remained her anchor, lips curling into a hopeful smile. Do you believe this? She whispered, half to herself and half to the air. Clara was struggling to comprehend what she had set in motion. Maybe, just maybe, her words had reached someone. As she continued to breathe through the aftershocks of her speech, the man beside her, the pillar of strength, leaned in. You did it, Clara. You opened their eyes, he murmured, his voice low but resonant. Did I? She replied, seeking assurance in his expression. I mean, just look at them. He nodded, an earnest look spurring her on. Yes. You sparked something. This is just the beginning. Suddenly, her heart began to race again, not with fear, but with exhilaration. There was something bubbling within her, a fire she'd only glimpsed before. What comes next, she pondered. The possibilities felt endless, but they were tinged with uncertainty. What if she failed to follow through? Before she could fully form further thoughts, the whispers around her grew louder. She noticed that the dismissive figure, the one who had lingered like a dark cloud, was now standing, arms crossed, snickering visibly at the front. Unbelievable, he scoffed. Do you really think you can change anything by standing up there and shouting? It's naive. A chill swept over her at his words, but the heaviness was quickly countered by the supportive shouts of others. Don't listen to him, Clara. Came a voice from the crowd. You have the courage we need. That steadied her, filling her up once more. Ignoring the critic, Clara allowed herself to be drawn back into the moment. The applause began to rise again, their appreciation growing not just for her, but for the ideas she had ignited. What am I really igniting? She questioned in the back of her mind. Could these ideas lead to actual change, or was it merely a fleeting emotional burst? Among the chaos, Clara slipped away from the dais, just needing a moment. The restroom door was her sanctuary, a place to collect herself. She closed her eyes, letting the damp air settle on her skin. Her reflection in the mirror wasn't a girl questioning her worth anymore, it was a woman, aware of her power and its weight. I'm tired of feeling small, she spoke softly to herself. And I will not let anyone diminish me again. The roar of clapping faded into the background. She realized that this was not just her battle to fight, she could stand alongside others who desperately needed their voices amplified. With newfound purpose, she stepped back into the hall. There was no ignoring the shifting tides of support surrounding her. Jeremy, the girl, the crowd, and even the dismissive skeptics who perhaps felt the tremors of change beneath their feet. Together, she thought, the word giving rise to a sense of determination. Together we can break down barriers. As the crowd awaited her return, she felt the subtle pull of something deeper, a calling beyond just one speech. What could this movement grow into, she wondered. What if this was her moment to not just influence but to lead? But the question loomed larger in her mind. Would the people gathered there be willing to take that step alongside her? Clara found her heart racing with excitement and trepidation. She stepped forward, ready to seize the moment. The reckoning was coming, but for now, each heartbeat felt like a drum roll for the journey ahead, a journey she was eager to embrace. Would her next move unlock even greater doors? Clara stepped back into the hall, a wave of warmth wrapping around her like a familiar blanket. The energy was palpable, thick with anticipation. Faces turned towards her, a mix of curiosity and hope. Each heartbeat echoed inside her chest, as if urging her to take charge, to embrace this crucial moment. As she walked back to the center stage, the cheers crescendoed. She wanted to capture their attention. "Thank you," she exclaimed, her voice steady despite the racing thoughts. "This is just the beginning." She looked out over the crowd, searching for the young girl, and when she found her, Clara felt a surge of inspiration. "You matter. Your voice matters," she said, noticing the bright eyes wide with wonder. Memories of her own struggles flickered back at her. Maybe she didn't just have the urge to speak, she had a responsibility to those who still felt voiceless. A powerful feeling unfolded, forcing the words from her lips. But to change things, we have to do more than just talk. The room seemed to draw in a collective breath. We have to act together. Gasps floated through the air, some faces in shock, while others mirrored her passion. We can't let fear hold us back. The path to change might be tough, but if we take that first step together, we can create something beautiful. Suddenly, the critic's smirk dimmed slightly, and from the corner of her eye, Clara spotted Jeremy standing among the crowd. He had a slight nod, encouragement, perhaps. That gave her strength. But then doubt brushed against her. Was she being too bold? What if they think I'm just a dreamer? She worried. And yet, the murmurs of the crowd assured her. "Show us the way, Clara." Someone shouted, enthusiasm bursting forth like fireworks. The energy rippled through the room, and Clara felt it infiltrate her very core. It lit anew the fire she thought had scattered with doubt moments before. "Okay," she said, resolute. "Let us organize. Let us plan. This movement has to be more than just words. We need committees, meetings, and actions that touch our communities." Excitement rippled among the crowd as she spoke. Ideas sprang forth like wildflowers in spring, with many voices contributing, each one more passionate than the last. Clara could hardly keep track of all the suggestions, but every sound filled her with a contented thrill. But then she noticed the dismissive figure still standing there, arms crossed, skepticism etched on his face. "What are you going to do?" He shot back, the sneer returning. More chatter. Where's the action? A wave of unease washed over Clara. For a moment, her heart sank. It's true. Talk was easy, wasn't it? Real change demanded sweat and grit. She took a deep breath and turned her focus back to the crowd. What if they truly got behind her? What if this was their call to action? Let us take a leap of faith together. She shouted, determination shimmering through her voice. Let us start building our community with each other as our foundation. The atmosphere transformed, swelling with hope like a tide. Each enthusiastic shout from the audience seemed to lift her higher, casting aside the doubt that had once clouded her thoughts. Clara realized that they weren't just there for her, they wanted this change just as much as she did. The spirit of unity was roaring now. She might not have all the answers, but together, they could discover them. As discussions formed, excitement grew, the crowd buzzed with ideas of what was next. Clara's heart raced, exhilarated by the possibilities ahead. But then, just as the momentum seemed to reach a peak, a quiet voice broke through. What if we fail? Clara turned, her heart thudding with the weight of that question. She felt it deep within her, the fear of failure loomed larger. What if we don't? She countered, her mind racing. What if this is our moment? The crowd fell silent, the collective weight of doubt hanging in the air. Clara's chest tightened, a new resolve dawning. This was at the moment she had long waited for. What are we willing to do, she asked softly, to avoid the regret of inaction? Would her question ignite the charge they needed? Would it propel them into the next phase of transformation? The answer hung in the air, charged with possibility, daring each soul to step forward. The stillness was palpable, nearly suffocating. Clara's heart was racing, urging her to break the silence that wrapped around the crowd like a tightening noose. What she saw reflected back at her was uncertainty, hope mingled with fear. She sensed the weight of each unspoken thought lingering in the air. What are we willing to do to avoid the regret of inaction? She repeated, her voice stronger this time. The words cut through the tension, rippling across faces like a stone thrown into still water. A young man near the front stepped forward, his fists clenched tightly at his sides. I'm in. He shouted, determination sparking in his eyes. I've seen too many people suffering because we kept our mouths shut. It's time we speak up. Cheers erupted, echoing off the walls like gunfire, igniting more voices into the chorus. Clara felt a thrill run through her. This was the moment she needed, the affirmation she wanted. Let us set a date. An older woman exclaimed, her voice resonating with authority. We can gather in the park for a community meeting. We'll discuss our plans, and not just dream, we'll put our ideas into action. Excited murmurs bounced around, growing louder and more fervent. Clara could hardly believe how swiftly everything was coming together. Yes. She cried, adrenaline fueling her every word. Let us pick leaders from within our community for committees. We need people who care, people who understand our struggles. A voice from the back shouted, but what if we hit walls? What if the city doesn't listen? Clara felt a chill run down her spine. Doubt again sought to creep in like an unwelcome intruder. But this time, she took a deep breath, willing to embrace the uncertainty. Yes, there will be obstacles, she said, her gaze sweeping across the gathering, looking for connection in every face. But if we truly believe in this, we can find a way around them. No one can silence us if we stand together. The room erupted in applause, shaking with energetic camaraderie as Clara continued. The energy was infectious, and she could see more hands rising in support, a gesture of solidarity. Yet, amid the cheers, the critic lingered, tightening his arms around his chest, conviction unyielding. Clara locked eyes with him. You think this is just empty talk, don't you? He tilted his head, skepticism dancing on his lips. I think it's a nice idea. But you'll need more than wishes to make it happen. That nagging uncertainty nibbled at her again. But just as despair threatened to weigh her down, Jeremy stepped forward. She remembered the nod he gave her earlier when she needed strength. He opened his mouth, and the crowd hushed again, instinctively drawn to him. The world is built on action. We do what we must, Jeremy said, his voice steady and warm. Let us show them what we can do. How we can work together. We will lift each other up. We will battle for each other's dreams, not just our own. His words were a spark, tossing aside her anxiety like a forgotten coat. Clara felt a wave of warmth rise in her chest. Yes. They were not just trying to overcome doubt but were gathering strength through their shared purpose. Let us do it. Clara shouted, her heart leaping with the exhilaration and fear mingling together. We'll make our voices heard and not apologize for it. Now she saw that hesitant faces had transformed. Shimmering with resolve, a wave of affirmation flowed throughout the hall. But it dawned on Clara how vulnerable she was, standing as the figurehead of this movement. What if she was wrong? What if the burden of hope became too much? The thought lingered, thorny and unwelcome, yet unavoidably present. Would she allow her fears to overpower the possible change that awaited them? With the eyes of the crowd upon her, Clara needed to find an answer before the moment slipped away. Had she truly summoned enough courage to lead this charge? In the tense silence that followed, Clara took a deep breath, letting it fill her with the warmth of belief. What happens next is just the beginning, she declared. Would that declaration set them on the right path, or was she standing at the edge of a daunting cliff, unsure of where the leap would lead? The energy in the room pulsed around Clara, a living thing made of hope and determination. The crowd had transformed from an anxious mass into a united front, and she could almost see the flicker of inspiration igniting imaginations. How about next Saturday, the older woman suggested, her voice carrying excitement. A chorus of nods and frantic whispers spread throughout the hall as people began jotting down ideas on scraps of paper. Clara felt the tension inside her loosen as she watched her community slowly come alive. They were not just dreaming anymore, they were waking up, but in quiet moments, Clara's heart thudded with apprehension. What if they really did face obstacles? The critics would be out there, lurking like shadows ready to pounce on mistakes. Were they really ready for the fight ahead? As if reading her mind, Jeremy leaned closer, his voice low but firm. It's okay to feel afraid. It means you care, he said. We all do. And that's what will keep us moving forward. Clara met his gaze, finding strength in his understanding. She took a breath, ready to dive deeper into this moment. Let us not just aim for the meeting to meet. Let us make it more. Let us create a framework that will guide us, sharpen our voices into a symphony. She stepped back, not hiding behind a pulpit, but instead weaving through the crowd, making contact, building intimacy. Clara shared her vision of inclusive committees tackling various issues: poverty, education, safety. The response was a resounding affirmation, voices lifting to form a chorus that drowned out any lingering doubts. One by one, people began sharing their stories, their struggles. The young man spoke of his childhood, how he lived in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce. Tears glimmered in the eyes of an elder woman as she recounted her son's battles with addiction. Each tale, raw and honest, fueled the fire within Clara. They were all tied together by their pain, and now they were bound by determination. As Clara listened, each new voice gave her courage. They were no longer alone in their struggles. They were a family, a community built from shared burdens, ready to uplift one another, perhaps even able to right the injustices laden upon them. The excitement swelled again, pulses quickening as they discussed strategy, picking leaders, crafting messages, and making flyers. Clara began to feel the weight of responsibility. What if she failed them? Yet, she couldn't let fear take hold. She had to be the leader they believed she could be, the voice that would rally them all. Her voice rose above the clamor. This is what makes us powerful. Together, we can forge change. The room erupted once more into applause, a wave of sound that made Clara feel both elated and terrified. but as the cheers echoed, a sudden thought crashed over her like icy water. What if they succeeded? What if they made the changes, but it didn't lead to the brighter future they all dreamed of? Clara. What's our first step? Jeremy called, breaking the spell. Suddenly, the exhilarating weight of her vision settled back onto her shoulders. We start with one pivotal task: let us reach out to the local newspaper. We need coverage. People must hear our call. Cheers erupted again, but Clara's mind turned inward. Could the media be a double-edged sword? She began to wonder just how far they'd have to stretch, just how much they'd need to sacrifice to see their dreams realized. As the meeting wound down and the crowd began to disperse, she noticed the critic still watching from the edge. Was it skepticism in his eyes or fear of change? She didn't know, but she sensed the journey ahead could change them all permanently. Clara took a deep breath, clarity washing over her. This was her fight, and it was only just beginning. What pitfalls lay in wait? What doubts would rise to thwart them? Together, she whispered to herself, determined to face whatever came next. Clara stood at the front of the now bustling community hall, her heart soaring as the energy pulsed around her. People were already chatting excitedly about the next steps, ideas flying like confetti. She could hardly believe how quickly the crowd had transformed from hesitant faces to passionate advocates for change. Next Saturday. An eager voice shouted from the back. We'll meet at the park. Everyone can bring ideas. The overwhelmingly positive response sparked a cascade of enthusiasm among the crowd. Clara felt a rush of pride, but also the weight pressing on her shoulders. This wasn't just an idea, it was a commitment. As the chatter continued, she caught Jeremy's eye across the room. He was talking to a group, animatedly sharing the vision they had begun to outline together. In that moment, she saw him not just as a friend but as a partner, someone who understood the gravity of what they were embarking on. Clara. The shout brought her back to reality. The older woman who had suggested the park event stood nearby, her eyes bright with determination. We could organize donation drives too, to support those who need it most. Maybe some workshops? Absolutely. Clara responded, enthusiasm replacing her earlier apprehension. Let us create a resource center somewhere people can come for help and guidance. She envisioned a space where their community could gather, not only to find assistance but to share skills and knowledge. The air crackled with excitement as more voices added to the momentum, each one building on the last, but in the middle of this celebration, Clara felt an underlying fear. Renewed doubt started creeping back in. What if they don't take us seriously? What if it all falls apart? The critic's doubting expressions flashed in her mind. She wanted to shake those thoughts away, to believe in the spirit of the people she stood among. Suddenly, as if sensing her turmoil, Jeremy made his way toward her. Hey, he said, voice warm, as if sharing a secret. You know what you did back there? You brought everyone together. That's what leadership is, sparking the fire in others. Clara searched his eyes, and in them, she found strength. I just hope they really believe in this. I mean, what if they give up? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. There's no going back now, he replied, his gaze steady. You sparked something big. They feel it too. You're not alone in this. That realization settled deep in her chest, making room for something brighter. She wasn't on a journey meant for one, they were all in this together, a collective striving for progress. She would be a leader surrounded by comrades, a family forged from shared struggles. The meeting began to wind down, but excitement lingered. As people began to leave, Clara felt a gentle tap on her arm. It was the young girl she had seen during her speech. Are you really going to help us? The girl asked, her eyes wide and hopeful. Clara knelt down, meeting her gaze directly. Absolutely. Together, we'll make everything better. You're a big part of this. Your voice matters. The girl beamed, her mother smiling proudly from a few steps away. It struck Clara then this was a generational shift. As she stood back up, a sense of purpose surged through her. Each face she saw was a reminder of why they had to fight, why they needed to succeed. "Look out for each other, for the ones without a voice," she called out as the last stragglers began to leave. "That's our mission." As the hall finally emptied, a sense of calm descended. Clara turned to Jeremy, who was gathering some flyers and notes. "I think we did it," she breathed, relief washing over her. "Yeah, but it's just the start," he reminded her, a hint of a smile curling his lips. "A beautiful beginning." Weeks rolled into months, and the community began to flourish in ways Clara had never anticipated. They organized meetings, established committees, and connected with local news outlets. The stories began to spread. Our community's voice couldn't be muted. Through it all, Clara learned to embrace her role not just as a maid, but as a catalyst for change. With each breakthrough, she found empowerment, understanding that her identity was not framed by her job but by her actions and values. At a follow-up event, Clara stood beside Jeremy, now an integral part of the movement. They watched as the hall filled with people eager to engage, hands shooting up to offer ideas, the once quiet whispers transforming into a chorus of determination. "Together, we are more," Clara said, feeling the warmth of belonging fill her. "This is the community we've been longing for, stronger together." As the applause erupted, she smiled through the tears of emotion that brimmed in her eyes. This was their transformation, a shared journey that turned individual voices into a resonant anthem for change, and as Clara took a moment to soak it in, she couldn't help but think how far they had come. Her heart swelled with hope. Within this vibrant tapestry of unity, Clara found a promise, one that bound them together, driving them into the future. As Clara looked around at the joyful faces, she felt a spark of determination return to her soul. This, she knew, was only the beginning. If you're feeling inspired by this incredible transformation, then you need to subscribe now to our channel. This is your moment to show your support for more exclusive stories that uplift and empower. Leave a like to feed the algorithm and help spread the joy. I want to hear your feelings. Comment down below and share how this ending made you feel. Don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Join us in this beautiful journey. Together we can make a difference.